finish this chapter. Alright. Oh, did I get the right thumbnail? Probably didn't change. I did. I should check my mic volume. I should always do that before I go live, huh? Effects of international propaganda. In the domain of external politics and the propaganda that is directed toward the outside, there is practically no more private propaganda or any diversity of propagandas. Even parties, indentured to foreign government and thus making propaganda different from their own national government, direct their propaganda to the interior. But what character does this unique form of propaganda, directed to the outside, take? And what repercussions has it on a democracy that conducts it? Can it be that it really exists in the domain of information? What's up, Pi? We have abundant proof nowadays that straight information addressed to a foreign country is entirely useless. We are talking here primarily of propaganda directed at the communist countries. Where the problem is to overcome national antipathies, which exist even between friendly nations, allegiance to a different government, to a different psychological and historical world, and finally to an opposite propaganda, it is fruitless to expect anything from straight information. The bare fact can accomplish nothing against such barriers. Facts are not believed. Other than in exceptional cases, military occupation and so on. People believe their own government over a foreign government. The latter's facts are not believed. In fact, propaganda can penetrate the consciousness of the masses of a foreign country only through the myth. It cannot operate with simple arguments pro and con. It does not address itself to already existing feelings, but must create an image to act as a motive force. This image must have an emotional character that leads to the allegiance of the entire being without thought. That is, it must be a myth. What are you saying, pal? I don't know what that word is. I do read the Bible. Veckel wouldn't let me talk about the Bible last night. If you watch my video, P. Mars versus the King of Wakanda, Veckel is a Fisher-Price Christian. But then democracy takes a path that needs watching. First of all, it begins to play a game that drives man from the conscious and rational into the arms of irrational and obscure forces. But we already know that in this game, the believer is not the master, and that forces thus unleashed are rarely brought under control again. To put it differently, mythical democratic propaganda in no way prepares its listeners for democracy, but strengthens their totalitarian tendencies, providing at best a different direction for those tendencies. We will have to come back to this. But above all, we must ask ourselves what myth the democracy should use. From experience, we have seen that the democracies have used the myths of peace, of freedom, of justice, and so on. Paleface. Oh. I'm not actually pale. My webcam doesn't, you can't see, like, I'm actually brown. I'm not fucking kidding. I'm brown, but it looks white. Because my webcam, like, makes everything look fucking white as shit. It's like fucked up contrast or something. All that has now been used, I'm actually Native American. All that has now been used, and is all the more unacceptable because everybody uses these words. But the myth used by propaganda must be specific. The myth of blood and soil was remarkable. What specific myths are left for democracy? Either subjects that cannot possibly form the content of a myth, such as well-being, or the right to vote, or democracy itself. Contrary to what one may think, the myth of democracy is far from exhausted and can still furnish good propaganda material. The fact that communist authoritarian regimes also have chosen democracy as the springboard of propaganda tends to prove its propagandistic value. And, to the extent that democracy is presented, constructed, and organized as a myth, it can be a good subject of propaganda. Propaganda appeals to belief. It rebuilds the drive toward the lost paradise and uses man's fundamental fear. Only from this aspect does democratic propaganda have some chance of penetration into non-democratic foreign countries. But one must then consider the consequences. The first consequence is that any operation that transforms democracy into a myth transforms the democratic ideal. Democracy was not meant to be a myth. The question arose early in 1791 in France, and we know what, shortly after, Jacobinism made of French democracy. We must understand this. Jacobinism saved the country. It claimed to have saved the Republic, but it is clear that it only saved the Jacobin regime by destroying all that was democratic. We cannot analyze here at length the influence of the myth on the abolition of democracy during 1793 to 95. Let us merely say that democracy cannot be an object of faith or of belief. It is expression of opinions. There is a fundamental difference between regimes based on opinion and regimes based on belief. I used to know my mom knew. It's like some French Canadian tribe. But I'm like, it's more, my mom is more native. Like I'm probably like a 16th native is all, but like I tan really easy. When I was born like I looked native when I was a baby, but then I grew up, I looked more European. To make myth of democracy is to present the opposite of democracy. One must clearly realize that the use of ancient myths and the creation of new ones is a regression toward primitive mentality, regardless of material progress. The evocation of mystical feeling is the rejection of democratic feeling. Considerable problems arise in the United States because of such diverse myths, as, for example, the Ku Klux Klan, the American Legion, or Father Divine. These are anti-democratic, but they are localized, only partial and private. The matter becomes infinitely more serious when the myth becomes public, generalized, and official, when what is an anti-mystique becomes a mystique. I don't know what he means by that. An anti-mystique? Hey, Nicole. What does Mystique mean? Mystique is a character in Marvel. A fascinating aura of mystery, awe, and power surrounding someone or something. So an aura of mystery. So when what is anti-mystery, awe, and power becomes mystery, awe, and power. Huh? Because the democracy is anti-mystery? Or wait, what? The Ku Klux Klan is anti-democratic because why? Because the American Legion is anti. I don't understand what he's saying in this. Of course, we have said that such democratic propaganda is created for external use. People already subjected to totalitarian propaganda can be reached only by the myth, and even that does not change their behavior or mentality. It simply enters into the existing mold and creates new beliefs there. But looking at things this way implies two consequences. Of course, wait. First, we accept the fact that such external democratic propaganda should be a weapon, that we are dealing here with psychological warfare, and that we adjust ourselves to the enemy's train of thought, and that, proceeding from there, the people that we subject to our propaganda are not those whom we want to see become democratic, but whom we want to defeat. If we actually work on such a nation with the help of the myth, we confirm it in the state of mind, in a behavior, and in a concept of life that is anti-democratic. We do not prepare it to become a democratic nation, for, on the one hand, we reinforce or continue the methods of its own authoritarian government, and on the other, we cannot give the people, by such means, the desire to adhere to something else in another way. We are simply asking for the same kind of acceptance of something else, of another form of government. Is this sufficient to make people switch allegiance? That is the democratic propaganda problem in Germany and Japan. In second place, such methods imply that we consider democracy an abstraction. For if we think that to cast different ideas in the mold of propaganda is sufficient to change the nature of propaganda, we must make a mere theory or idea of democracy. Propaganda, whatever its content, tends to create a particular psychology and a determined behavior. Superficially, there can be differences, but they are all illusory. To say, for example, that fascist propaganda, whose subject was the state, and Nazi propaganda, whose subject was the race, were different from each other because of their difference in content, is to become a victim of unreal and academic distinctions. But the democratic idea, when promulgated by means that lead to non-democratic behavior, only hardens the totalitarian man in his mold. This does not take into account that this democratic veneer and the myth of democracy as propaganda subject a very This does not take into account that this democratic veneer and the myth of democracy as a propaganda subject are very fragile. It is, in fact, one of propaganda's essential laws that its objects always adjust themselves to its forms. In this, as in so many other domains of the modern world, the means impose their own laws. To put it differently, the objects of propaganda tend to become totalitarian because propaganda itself is totalitarian. This is exactly what I said when I spoke of the necessity to turn democracy into a myth. Thus, such propaganda can be effective as a weapon of war, but we must realize when using it that we simultaneously destroy the possibility of building true democracy. I have said that such propaganda was for external use, that the myth was directed to the outside, but it is not certain that one can impose such a limitation. When a government builds up the democratic image in this fashion, it cannot isolate the external and internal domains from each other. Therefore, the people of the country making such propaganda must also become convinced of the excellence of this image. They must not merely know it, but also follow it. This, incidentally, sets a limit to the degree to which propaganda can lie. A democratic government cannot present to the outside world a radically inexact and mendacious picture of its policies, as can a totalitarian government. But one must qualify this thought in two ways. On the one hand, a democratic nation is itself more or less in the grip of propaganda and goes along with the idealistic image of its government because of national pride. On the other, even authoritarian governments are aware that in propaganda the truth pays, as I have said. This explains the final form of propaganda adopted by Goebbels in 1944. Yeah, so the propaganda is based on truth and facts mostly. And then the lie is in the narrative, so they'll present facts that support the narrative and omit facts that go against the narrative. That way, when you research the facts, you find that it's true, and then you'll believe the false narrative. Satan is behind all the propaganda. It shapes people's free thinking into the narrative of the publisher. Yes, I agree, Pi. Satan is the great deceiver, and yes, he is indoctrinating us and brainwashing us and using all the science and technology at his disposal to manipulate humans to serve Satan's will. Hello, YouTube. Okay, so from there on, the myth created for external use becomes known at home and has repercussions there. So the propaganda we use in other countries becomes known in our own country and has repercussions. Even if one does not try to influence people by making propaganda abroad, they will react indirectly. Therefore, the repercussions on a democratic population of the myth developed by its government for external use must be analyzed. These repercussions will lead primarily to the establishment of anonymity. What's anonymity? God, I feel like I should know what that word means. Anonymity. I'm like drawing a blank. Agreement. Unanimity? Unanimity. No, when I'm pronouncing it fucking stupid. Unanimity.
Unanimity.
Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Unanimity. Okay. Therefore, the repercussions on a democratic population of the myth developed by its government for external use must be analyzed. These repercussions will be held primarily to the establishment of unanimity. I'm going to shut off my AC. It's kind of hot, though. I kind of like it hot. Let's make it hot. Unanimity. Unanimity. Yeah, the earth is flat, YouTube. The ball earthers have no evidence, like atheists. Okay, this is a primary and very simple consequence. A myth, an image evoking belief, can stand no dilution, no half measures, no contradictions. One believes it or does not. The democratic myth must display this same form, incisive and coherent. It is of the same nature as of other myths. In order for the myth to be effective abroad, it must not be contradicted at home. No other voice must arise at home that would reach the foreign propaganda target and destroy the myth. Can anyone believe that it was possible to make effective propaganda, for example, toward Algeria, when it was immediately contradicted at home? How could the Algerians or any other foreigners take seriously a promise made by General de Gaulle in the name of France when the press immediately declared that one part of France was in disagreement with it. This will lead to the elimination of any opposition that would show that the people are not unanimously. Why can't I pronounce this word? This will lead to the elimination of any opposition that would show that the people are not unanimously behind the democracy embodied by the government. Such opposition can completely destroy all effectiveness of democratic propaganda. Besides, such propaganda is made by a government supported by a majority. The minority, though also democratic, will tend to be against such propaganda merely because it comes from the government, as we saw this in France after 1945. From there on, though in accord with the idea of democracy, this minority will show itself hostile to the democratic myth. Oh, like Black Lives Matter? Then, the government, if it wants its propaganda to be effective, will be forced to reduce the possibility of the minorities expressing itself, i.e., to interfere with one of democracy's essential characteristics. We are already used to this from wartime, as with censorship. Here we are face to face with the fact, discussed above, propaganda is by itself a state of war. It demands the exclusion of opposite trends and minorities. Not total and official, perhaps, but at least partial and indirect exclusion. Oh, so the minority actually would be the white nationalist. Because the Black Lives Matter is actually the majority because of all the white people that are part of it. Oh, I gotta give you a mod Ute. Wait, do you have another account? Is there a fake Ute? Or is that you just have two Utes? I doubt there's a fake Ute. Troll said I looked like Benny from Crossroads, so it's my icon. What? Do you actually go on Cam Ute? No, I'm not. I'm not a flat earther. I'm just. There's YouTube is a flat earther. T-Jump looks like a skinny, desperate Dan. Why is there two YouTubes? Oh, they're both you. Okay. You have the same name. I guess I have an account called PMars2. I should just make every account named PMars, and then people be like, I thought I banned this. What's going on? My bans don't work. Okay. If we pursue this train of thought, another factor emerges. For the myths to have real weight, it must rest on popular belief. To put it differently, one cannot simply project a myth to the outside, even by the powerful modern material means. Such an image will have no force unless it is already believed. The myth is contagious because beliefs are contagious. It is indispensable, therefore, that democratic people also believe the democratic myth. Conversely, it is not useful that the government itself should follow suit, but the government must be sure that its propaganda abroad is identical with its propaganda at home, and understand that its foreign propaganda will be strong only if it is believed at home. The United States understood this perfectly between 1942 and 1945. The more the myth will appear to be the expression of belief of the entire nation, the more effective it will be. It thus presumes unanimity. I said the word. Do you have another fucking account? Oh no. You have an account that blocks everyone? Hey, St. Tommy, you should check out my video, P Mars versus the King of Wakanda, because I totally lay into Veckel. Well, it's I mean, I suppose it's mainly I just call him the N-word a bunch, but Veckel is garbage. Fisher Price Christian, piece of shit. Dude, he treated me like dog shit. He treated me like a fucking Mexican. On Praise I Am a Child Molester's channel. Okay. We have seen how all propaganda develops the cult of personality. This is particularly true in a democracy. There one exalts the individual who refuses to be anonymous, rejects the mass, and eschews mechanization. He wants a human regime where men are human beings. Yeah, that's what I want. Treat me like a fucking human being. I guess that's too much to ask of a Christian, right? A Fisher Price Christian. Please treat me like a human. Oh, I guess I'm asking too much. I apologize. He needs a government whose leaders are human beings, and propaganda must show them to him as such. It creates these personalities. To be sure, the object at this level is not idolatry, but idolatry cannot fail to follow if the propaganda is done well. Whether such idolatry is given to a man in uniform, bursting with decorations, or a man in a work shirt and cap, or a man wearing a business suit and soft hat makes no difference. Those are simple adaptations of propaganda to the feelings of the masses. The democratic masses will reject the uniform but idolize the soft hat if it is well presented. There can be no propaganda without a personality, a political chief. Clemenceau, Daladier, de Gaulle, Churchill, Roosevelt, MacArthur are obvious examples. And even more, Khrushchev, who, after having denounced the cult of personality, slipped into the same role differently, but with the same ease and obeying the same necessity. The nation's unanimity is necessary. This unanimity is embodied in one personality, in whom everyone finds himself, in whom everyone hopes and projects himself, and for whom everything is possible and permissible. So to Smokey, that would be Trump. So Smokey are people that like Trump. They see themselves in Trump. They project themselves onto him. And it makes them feel powerful. Yeah, Veckelism treated me with contempt. He's sitting there quoting the Bible, and Romans 14 clearly says, do not treat your brother with contempt if you have a disagreement about, like, eating meat or not eating meat, which you can apply to, like, fucking any disagreement virtually, right? So you're not supposed to treat people with contempt, which means you basically dehumanize them and treat them like a fucking dog. So Veckel treated me like a fucking dog on Praise I Am a Child Molester's channel. Who dislikes you, Tommy? Oh, Pi. Yeah, Tommy, you're pretty funny. You're funny for, like, you know, an old boomer. Okay. This need for unanimity is accepted by some. This need for unanimity is accepted by some of those who have studied the problem of propaganda in democracy. It has been claimed that this unanimity indicates the transition from an old form of democracy to a new one, massive and progressive democracy. In other words, a democracy of allegiance, a system in which all will share the same conviction. This would not be the centrifugal conviction, i.e., one expressing itself in diverse forms and admitting the possibility of extreme divergences. It would be a centripetal conviction with which everything would be measured by the same yardstick. Democracy would express itself in a single voice, going further than just forms, all the way to rites and liturgies. It would, on the other hand, be a democracy of participation in which the citizen would be wholly engaged. His complete life, his movements would be integrated into a given social system. And one of the authors gives as an example the Nuremberg Party Congress. What a strange example of democracy. So a democracy creates like us all fucking thinking the same shit, like robots. It doesn't matter. Like, why do we care what people intellectually believe is true? You don't know God with your intellect. You know God with your heart. Like, we should be judging. You're judging people based on their intellectual beliefs, and you're not judging them based on their heart. You're supposed to judge people by their fucking heart. Like, what? Who fucking cares if you think the moon is made of cheese? It doesn't fucking matter to me. Do you love or do you not love? That's all that fucking matters. Love is the only thing that fucking matters. Literally, the only thing in the reality we're in that has any relevance is love. That's the only thing that matters in life. Everything else is shit. If you don't have love, you have nothing. You have a fucking drug addiction. Praise's stream was to discuss the Trinity, and Veckel wanted to argue about nothing. He comes into the stream, takes up hours of time arguing about unimportant, irrelevant bullshit. Yes, Veckel does do that. And he's a narcissist who tries to control the conversation. It was really funny. Like, I was talking about how I'm a sinner, right? And how, like, I just, I commit sins all the time. He let me tell my story about how I sin, right? Didn't interrupt me. The second I start talking about what I think about Jesus or what I think about the Bible, he won't let me even fucking talk. He won't let me talk. He's an absolute fucking nigger. I think we should all just refer to Veckel as a fucking useless nigger and be done with it. I mean, the guy is a fucking cancerous nigger. He's stupid, too. Dude, he should just draw his fucking cartoons. Like, why does he even talk to people? He has no interest in listening to anyone but himself. He sits there and preaches and ignores everything that is being said to him. Why the fuck are you here, Veckel? Go draw your little fucking porno cartoon or whatever. I don't think... No, there's no standard in Scripture, though. You can't have a standard. I don't think I think Veckel is a fucking, like, spiritually dead Fisher Price Christian. I don't think the guy's dead inside. I don't judge him. Well, I mean, I judge him, and I can obviously interpret that he's a piece of crap and has his heart is as black as his skin. Okay? His heart is as dark as his skin. Okay? So, I mean, it's fucking obvious. It couldn't be more obvious to me last night that Veckel is a hateful, angry person. He has no love in his heart. He has zero love. The guy has no fucking love. He's not my brother. My brother is the one that loves. The law is not the standard, dude. You're a slave to sin still if you think that. There is no fixed duty. The standard is love, unconditional love. That's the fucking standard. That's it. There's no fucking like law. It's unconditional love. That's my standard. Did Veckel love me last night? No, he didn't. He treated me like shit. Did I love Veckel last night? You're absolutely right. Do I like Veckel? No. Veckel is my enemy, but I love him. I want the best for him. You can see it. You can see. Watch the stream, P-Mars versus the King of Wakanda. You can see clearly Veckel shows me zero love. He shows me hate. He shows me animosity. You can see that I show Veckel love. I am patient with him. I let him talk. You know, I showed him so much patience and love last night, and he gave me zero in return. But I'm not mad about it because I expect that. I expect people to shit on me and then I love them still. That's what life is. Everyone's shitting on you and then you love them still. That's how you're supposed to be a Christian. But these fucking modern Christians, they act like the pagans where they're like, well, I'm only going to say hi to people that are Christian. I'm only going to love people that love me. And if people don't love me, then I'm going to hate them. I mean, this is how these fucking people act. Well, but then I'm going to tell other people and preach the Bible while they don't follow the most simple fucking things to love my enemy. I can't do that, but I'm going to preach to everyone about the Bible. I don't understand love at all. And, you know, I'm not an intellectual because I'm black. But I'll preach to everyone. It's disgraceful. He is a disgrace, an embarrassment, and a shame. It is true that only such a unanimous and unitary society can produce propaganda that can be effectively carried beyond the borders. But we must ask ourselves whether such a society is still democratic. What is this democracy that no longer includes minorities and opposition? As long as democracy is merely the interplay of parties, there can be no opposition. But when we hear of a massive democracy with grandiose ceremonies in which the people participate at the prompting of the state, that signifies, first of all, a confusion between the government and the state, and indicates further that anyone who does not participate is not merely in opposition, but excludes himself from the national community expressing itself in this participation. It is truly extraordinary. It is a truly extraordinary transformation of the democratic structure, because there can no longer be any respect for the minority opposition to the state. An opposition that, lacking the means of propaganda, or at least any means that can compete with those of the state, can no longer make its voice heard, right? So like the third parties, we have the two-party. So we have this two-party system, but it's a false dichotomy, right? The Republicans work to increase power to the state. The Democrats work to increase power to the state. Both parties are increasing the government's power, unchecked. Unfucking checked. So that's not there should be a party that wants to reduce the power of government. But our system, our democratic system the state does not tolerate any opposition. So we have two-party system and both parties increase the power of the state. And it's bullshit. It's fake. Yeah, Pi, I agree. You love people by telling them the truth. That's why I told Veckel he was the N-word. No, I don't think so. I think the law is a stumbling block to love because, I mean, I look at Smokey Saint, look at Veckel. The law is they can't love other people because they're so obsessed with law. So the law is a stumbling block to love. So take the law and shove it up your fucking ass because it's shit. I am justified by Jesus and obey his command. Jesus' command is to love God and love others, and that's it. I hate people with my love. True. Grace and law do not mix. But the law was grace. The law was given to us with the intention that it would help us love each other, have justice, have mercy, and have faith. It was Matthew 23:23. This is what I brought up on. All right, I tried to talk about this, but Veckel wouldn't let me talk about it because Veckel is fucking Satan. Veckel is Satan if Satan was a pedophile. Matthew 23:23. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees. That's like Veckel and Smokey. You hypocrites. You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matter of the law: justice, mercy, faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. So yes, the law isn't bad, right? Like, the problem is, you can't judge the law if you don't understand the meaning behind the law. So the meaning behind the law is about love, justice, mercy, and faithfulness, and loving each other, right? To sum it up, it's just to love each other. Like, if you love someone, you serve justice, you treat them just, you give them mercy, and you're faithful. That's love. The purpose of the law is to love. That's why Jesus said, love God and love others, right? That's all, to sum it up, to sum up the law. So Jesus gives us the meaning behind the law, right? So now we are no longer slaves to sin, and we're not bound by the law. Because we understand that if you're a Christian, you should understand the meaning behind the law, which is to love, and then just fucking love. You don't have to follow the law literally. You just have to love, right? But that's the meaning, okay? To do open rooms. Maybe I will start doing open rooms if I get more people watching my streams. Who is this Vicky? Who's Vicky? Becky? What are you talking about? Law was given to condemn the lawless. No, law was given so we would treat each other with love. That's what the point of the law is. Morals are virtuous. Legalism is hypocrisy, and self-condemnation false. Look, I got a whole in this book that everyone fucking hates. Okay, I'll read the back to it. Look, you guys all hate this book and hate my French author. Why? He said, this is the back of the book. Pointing to the many contradictions between the Bible and the practice of church, Jacques Ellul asserts in this provocative and stimulating book that what we today call Christianity is actually far removed from the revelation of God. So does anyone have a problem with that? I mean, I think that's true. Like, there's a lot of difference between what the Bible teaches and what these fucking institutions of the church teach. There's a huge difference, okay? Successive generations have reinterpreted Scripture and modeled it after their own cultures. True. Like, we're doing that today with the homosexual Christians, right? Where the Christians are now, like, cool with the trannies. We'll have some tranny preachers. Okay, so obviously we see today the church is conforming to culture, so obviously they did it in the past, right? Thus moving society further from the truth of the original gospel. The church also perverted the gospel message, for instead of simply doing away pagan practice and belief, it reconstituted the sacred, set up its own religious forms, and thus resacralized the world. All right. It'll develop several areas in which this perversion is most obvious, including the church's emphasis on moralism. Hear that? That's a perversion. Moralism is a perversion of revelation. And he has a chapter here about moralism. See that? Moralism. Okay? And he says, First, in the Hebrew Bible, the Torah is not a book of morality, whether as constructed by a moralist or lived out by a group. The Torah, as God's word, is God's revelation about himself. It lays down what separates life from death, symbolizes the total sovereignty of God. Similarly, what Jesus says in the Gospels is not morality. It has an existential character and rests on a radical change of being. Again, what Paul says in the exhortations in his letters is not morality, but consists of practical directions by way of example. Second, there is no moral system. There is no moral system. There is no moral system in the revelation of God in Jesus Christ. There are no moral precepts that can exist independently in some way, that can have universal validity because of things called a moral dilemma, okay? Independently that can serve the elaboration of a moral system. Third, the revelation of God in Jesus Christ is against morality. The revelation of God in Jesus Christ is against morality. Not only is it honestly impossible to derive a moral system from the Gospels and the epistles, but further, this is what Veckel and Smokey are trying to do, by the way. They're fucking perverting revelation, but they don't give a fuck. They think they're God. But further, the main key in the gospel, the proclamation of grace, the declaration of pardon, and the opening up of life to freedom are the direct opposite of morality. Okay? The main keys in the gospel, I'm reading this again because you people are dense. The main keys in the gospel, the proclamation of grace, the declaration of pardon, and the opening up of life to freedom are the direct opposite of morality, for they imply that all conduct, including that of the devout or most moral, is wholly engulfed in sin. If you follow the law perfectly, you're still a sinner. Then he goes on to talk about Genesis. It was about Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In this context, knowledge means decision. What is not acceptable to God is that we should decide on our own what is good and evil. Like, who is good and evil. Because even if, he says, if we decide what is good, we substitute our own will for God's. We construct a morality when we say and do what is good, and it is then we are radically sinners. To elaborate a moral system is to show oneself to be a sinner before God, not because the conduct is bad, but because even if it is good, another good is substituted for the will of God. Okay, so even if your moral system is great and you have a great moral system, no issues with it, it's still evil because you're playing God. You're not God. God is the one who decides and punishes. This is why Jesus attacks the Pharisees so severely, even though they're the most moral of people, live the best lives, and are perfectly obedient and virtuous. They have progressively substituted their own morality for the living and actual Word of God that can never be fixed in commandments. And then he says, there's more. He says that love obeys no morality and gives birth to no morality. None of the great categories of revealed truth is relative to morality or can give birth to it. Freedom, truth, light, word, and holiness do not belong at all to the order of morality. What they evoke is a mode of being, a model of life that is very free, that involves constant risks that is constantly renewed. The Christian life is contrary to morality because it is not repetitive. No fixed duty has to be done, no matter what course life may take. Morality always interdicts this mode of being. It is an obstacle to it and implicitly condemns it, just as Jesus is inevitably condemned by moral people. All right? Morality is gay. Moralism equal veculism equal legalism equal works for religion equal deathly. Amen, Tommy. Galatians chapter 3 through 5. Morality is... I'm trying to read your shit, Tommy. You fucking deleting it. Vekel, it's VKL. VEKL. You're deleting all... Okay, well, I was trying to read your comments, Tommy, but I guess not. You have a propaganda French book. And I'm going to read it upside down. Maybe not. It's too hard. Yeah. I think Christians, we live in a world where Satan deceives us with propaganda. So you might want to, like, study it. I have been studying it, like, not in a good way. Like, I should have read this book years ago. This is very, very enlightening. And I totally forgot where I was now. Oh, yeah. Minority positions. I think I'm here. The minority... Okay, so we were talking about how the state cannot tolerate a minority opposition. So that's why there's a false dichotomy between the Republicans and the Democrats, because they both increase power to the state. The minority is heard even less because the effects of the myth, inflated by propaganda, are always the same and always anti-democratic. Anyone who participates in such a socio-political body and is imbued with the truth of the myth necessarily becomes sectarian. Repeated so many times, being driven in so many different forms into the propagandee's subconscious, this truth, transmitted by propaganda, becomes for every participant an absolute truth, which cannot be discussed without lies and distortion. Democratic peoples are not exempt from what is vaguely called psychosis, but such propaganda, if it is effective, predisposes people to, or even causes, these psychoses. So propaganda causes psychosis, apparently. Yes, Tommy, you're right. Morality is gay. Legalism is gay. You shouldn't create commandments. You should just... It's an abstract concept about how we should treat other people, how we should love other people. It's an abstract thing. And if you put it into a command, you write it down, it fucking... It loses its fucking meaning. Because, like, it's not like we can make these universal claims, like, it's wrong to kill a human being, right? Yeah, but wait, maybe there's a situation where it is not wrong to kill a human being. So we can't say that. Okay, so then, but we know it's wrong to kill an innocent human being. I mean, we have to have all these caveats and shit. You can't make, there's always an exception. For every rule, there's always an exception. There's always a circumstance where you could imagine that rule would be actually immoral, where it's maybe moral 99% of the time, yeah, wrong to kill people, but maybe there's a 1% situation where, oh, okay, actually it is justified, it is the right thing to kill someone. So we can't make universal commandments like Vekel and Smokey are trying to do. Well, actually, Smokey is a little bit more aware of the problem. Vekel is completely ignorant. Smokey is at least like somewhat knowledgeable about philosophy. So he understands like moral dilemmas exist. Vekel doesn't even understand moral dilemmas exist. He's He's literally a fucking absolute. Oh, he's so dumb. He's so dumb. If people do not believe in the myth, it cannot serve to combat totalitarian propaganda. But if people do believe in it, they are victims of these myths, which, through democratic on the surface, sorry. I want to start all over again. Okay. If people do not believe in the myth, it cannot serve to combat totalitarian propaganda. But if the people do believe in it, they are victims of these myths, which, though democratic on the surface, have all the traits of all other myths, particularly the impossibility, in the eyes of believers, of being questioned. So we can't question these myths. But this tends to eliminate all opposing truth, which is immediately called error. Once democracy becomes the object of propaganda, it also becomes as totalitarian, authoritarian, and exclusive as dictatorship. So propaganda turns a democracy into a dictatorship. And I like that he calls it victims of myth. I like to say that this helps me actually not hate people like Veckel and Smokey Saint, because I understand that they are victims of propaganda. They were born into a corrupt world. Their parents were probably fucking corrupted. Their parents probably fucked them up. Then they go to a public education system that indoctrinates them and fucks them up. And if they go to college, that's even worse than the public education. That'll really fuck up your brain. And there's all sorts of, like entertainment, fucking sports. It's just propaganda and influences are rampant in our society all over the place. So it's a wonder that anyone could ever break through it. So we can't really expect Smokey Saint or Veckel to someday realize the truth and see reality for what it is and maybe start using their brain. It's not going to happen because they're victims of a corrupt world, a corrupt system. They're victims of propaganda. They didn't really have a chance, so we can't hate them, right? We wish the best for them. We wish that they someday, the brain, the light bulb goes on and they start thinking, and then they realize they're full of shit. The first step to knowledge is to humble yourself, right? Empty your cup. You gotta humble yourself. Do you see Veckel or Smokey? Do you see they're humble at all? Or do you see arrogance? If someone's arrogant, they're also an idiot, because you have to humble yourself to be intelligent. That's a fact, motherfucker. The enthusiasm and exaltation of a people who cling to a myth necessarily lead to intransigence. Fuck's sake. Intransigence.
Intransigence.
I pronounced it right. Refusal to change one's views or to agree about something. That's what I was just talking about. Hey, we're on the same page. Enthusiasm and exaltation of a people who cling to a myth necessarily leads to intransigence and sectarianism. What's sectarianism? Excessive attachment to a particular sect or party, especially in religion.
Sectarianism.
Nice. Yes. So Smokey and Veckel are victims of sectarianism. Or they are attached to their religion and their Republican Party, and it makes them retarded. They can't see any other point of view. The myth of democracy arose, for example, during the period of the convention. There we had forms of massive democracy with great ceremonies and efforts at unanimity. But was this still democracy? Are there not also changes in the mores of the United States when everything is called un-American, that is not strict conformism? This term, un-American, so imprecise for the French, is in the United States is in the United States precise to the extent that it is a result of the belief in the myth. To provoke such belief and launch people on the road to such exaltation, without which propaganda cannot exist, really means to give people feelings and reflexes incompatible with life in a democracy. All right. So this is why when I start to challenge Smokey and disagree with them, he can't handle it, right? So he makes up an excuse. See, he's okay with you, like Andy challenging him or like Bruce challenging him because they're mentally retarded. So he feels like he can just dominate them and he won't ban them. He'll just come on my show and I'll fucking destroy you in a debate. But when he tries to do that to me, I make him look like a fucking retard. So he had to like make up this excuse like, oh, I'm going to ban Smokey or ban P. Mars because he said something that was crossing the line. Dude, how many times have I crossed the line on his show? Like, I say fucked up shit on the regular. So this is obviously an excuse and a lie to mask his cowardice and his refusal to be challenged by people that read books. If you're not a conformist, you're un-American. All those fuckers want me to conform to their beliefs because they're insecure. They don't even think their own beliefs are true. If Smokey and all those people, like, was it Cheryl that rag on me for reading and shit? If all those people are so confident that what they say is true, then why do they care whether or not I believe what they say? I think what I'm saying is true, and I give two shits if they agree with me or not. They can, dude, fucking believe whatever garbage you want. I don't give a fuck. But like, they can't fucking handle someone that disagrees with them because they're insecure, because deep down they know they're full of shit. So they have to get internally, they can't fix themselves because they believe all these lies and garbage. So they have to, they put their internal problem and they project it on the outside world. And they go, oh, I'll feel better if everyone believes and agrees with me. That'll make me feel better on the inside, but it actually won't. Because there's darkness, there's emptiness inside you. That's the problem. You don't want to deal with that. You want to pretend it's an external problem, but it's an internal problem. That's why you try and control other people instead of controlling your own emotions. People on the road to exaltation, without which propaganda cannot exist, really means give people feelings and reflexes incompatible with life and democracy. This is really the ultimate problem. Democracy is not just a certain form of political organization or simply an ideology. It is, first of all, a certain view of life and a form of behavior. If democracy were only a form of political organization, there would be no problem. Propaganda could adjust to it. This is the institutional argument. Propaganda is democratic because there is no unitary state centralized by propaganda. If, then, we were merely in the presence of an ideology, there still would be no problem. Propaganda can transmit any ideology, subject to the qualifications made above, and, therefore, also the democratic ideology, for example. But if democracy is a way of life composed of tolerance, respect, degree, choice, diversity, and so on, all propaganda that acts on behavior and feelings and transforms them in depths turns man into someone who can no longer support democracy because he no longer follows democratic behavior. Look at the tolerance. We should be tolerant, right? But is there tolerance? No. The people who claim, oh, you're not tolerant, they're the most intolerant people, right? Like the LGBTQ plus. So that's interesting. Even if democracy is based on things like tolerance, respect, degree, choice, diversity, and so on, propaganda that acts on behavior and feelings and transforms them in depth turns man into someone who can no longer support democracy. So propaganda turns us into people that don't support democracy. Fascinating. Yet, propaganda cannot create democratic behavior by the promulgation of a myth, which is the only way of making propaganda on the outside, but which modifies the behavior of the people at home. We shall find the same problem in examining certain effects of domestic propaganda. I thought I was going to finish this shit, but then I just started... Well, I'm actually... I should finish it. This is like... I just have like 7 pages. 6 pages. But there's still an appendix, so whatever. I'm kind of tired of talking, so I'm going to stop. And say, yeah. Infinite monkey theory. The 10 Commandments are actually called the 10 Sayings. Thanks, Calvin. You guys want the 10 Commandments? You guys want moralism so much? Fine. Here's Veckel's 10 Commandments. His people.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It's the 10 crack commandments. Wow. Man can't tell me nothing about this coke. Can't tell me nothing about this crack, this weed, and my hustling niggas. Niggas on the corner. I ain't forget you niggas. My triple B niggas.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I've been in this
Game for years. It made me an animal. There's rules to the shit. I wrote me a manual, step-by-step booklet for you to get your game on track, not your wig pushed back. Rule number uno, never let no one know how much dough you hold, cause you know the cheddar breed jealousy, especially if the man fucked up. Get your ass stuck up.
Number 2. Never let them know your next move. Don't you know bad boys move in silence and violence? Take it from your highness. I done squeeze mad clips at these cats for they bricks and chips. Number 3, never trust nobody. Your mama set that ass up, properly gassed up, hoodie and masked up. For that fast buck, she be laying in the bushes to light that ass up. Number 4, know you've heard this before. Never get high on your own supply. Number 5, never sell no crack where you rest at. I don't care if they want an ounce, tell them bounce. Number 6, that goddamn credit, get it. You think a crackhead paying you back, shit, forget it. 7, this rule is so underrated. Keep your family and business completely separated. Money and blood don't mix like 2 dicks and no bitch. Find yourself in serious shit. Number 8, never keep no weight on you. Them cats that squeeze your guns can hold jumps too. Number 9 should have been number 1 to me. If you ain't getting bags, stay the fuck from police. If niggas think you're snitching, they ain't trying to listen. They be sitting in your kitchen, waiting to start hitting. Number 10, a strong word called consignment. Strictly for live men, not for freshmen. If you ain't got the clientele, say hell no. Cause they gon' want their money, rain, sleet, hell, snow. Follow these rules, you'll have mad bread to break up. If not, 24 years on the wake up. Slug hit your temple, watch your frame shake up. Caretaker did your makeup. When you pass, your girl fucked my man Jacob. Heard in 3 weeks she sniffed a whole half a cake up. Heard she suck a good dick and could hook a steak up. Gotta go, more pies to bake up. Word up, Crack King, Frank Wizard.
4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3.